Okay, welcome to our new podcast, Common Ground. I'm going to bring in my co-host, Christy Taylor. How are you, Christy Taylor?
I'm good. How are you?
I am awesome. I'm so excited to do this today. I can't even say. So one thing that I did want to kind of clear up, and I think you and I are on the same page about this. We welcome comments, right, Christy?
Sure, absolutely. Yes, please.
But if you're going to be ugly or say anything ugly, you're not going to get on here. That's not going to happen in this place. So just one ground rule to start out.
I think that's a good rule.
So nothing gets put up on the screen if you're going to, if you're going to be a pill. Now, see, I can put this one up because that one's nice. And I can put this one up because that one's nice. So we'll keep it like that and we'll all be good. Christy, we have an interesting, we're kind of an interesting deal.
I think we are. Yeah.
So for people who don't know, how did we come to meet one another?
Yeah. Well, I have a blog that I started based on some feedback that some folks that followed me on Threads sent. I thought, man, I'll have a blog. So I started the blog back in July. And you had commented on one of my blog posts. And I feel like you feel the same way. We had some really healthy civil discourse over the subjects that I had on there. And so as you started interacting more, we just started talking more. So to me, that's the type of connection dialogue that I'm welcome to. So I've really enjoyed it. And then of course you've done everything. I'm going to make sure I say this. All I did today was show up.
Doesn't matter.
Right now, I just showed up. You did everything. So
it's fine. I'm used to doing it, so there's not even an issue. There's
no else that's willing to do it so that I don't have to, but I think this is great. But you reached out to me, and it was just I think it's probably one of those that people would, on either side, would probably agree with, that when you have somebody that is on the opposite side of the aisle from you that's reaching out to you, you might be a little bit hesitant to accept that. And that's just something that I feel I'm a big believer in. We do need to do more of that. And so when you took the initiative to do that, I thought I would be a dummy not to connect with you. So here we are.
I don't know about a dummy, but yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that I wanted to start out with is what you and I talked about before we came on. Nobody benefits when we get on social media and talk past each other and just do this. It's not helpful. And I tend to believe that there is a uniparty, and there are people that they don't care about us at all. We're just, little pawns in their big game. And if they can make us fight each other, then they get to do whatever they want because we're too busy fighting each other. And so my opinion about that is, to heck with you, I'm not playing that game. So they win if we decide we're going to continue to gripe at each other. If we say we're not going to do that and we begin dialogue, that makes their lives miserable, because you know what? You and me could probably come up with some stuff that could fix a lot of things.
Absolutely. I think too is just encourage others to try to do the same, or at least try to find a way to connect with somebody that doesn't have beliefs that align with yours.
Absolutely.
I know that's really that can be really challenging. But no, I agree. I think it's one of those, like I told you before, we jumped on here. I've done a lot of soul searching personally. And just, COVID, I think, was probably a shot in the arm for a lot of people. But it was one of those things that when I really looked at where I can contribute, one thing I know that doesn't add value is shit posting on social media. I'm not saying I don't enjoy doing it. sometimes it gives you that little release. You know what I mean?
Catharsis.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, what value am I actually adding?
Yeah.
And I'm actually spreading more divisiveness by doing that. I think both sides do that. And so I really looked at, and I'm going to call myself out, I have shamefully not been involved locally. Only because I've only been focused on national stuff, which is silly. Not that it's not important, but we have a lot more impact locally. And so rather than listening to either side media, because we get talking points from all the different media channels, I would rather connect with my neighbors, with my friends, with people that are maybe don't live in my neighborhood, or people that I may not be friends with, and get to know them, and then try to talk through some of these issues. That's the only way we're going to get ahead.
100%. So Lisa wanted to say, I read your post regarding Ty Burns and left a long comment in agreement with 95% of your post. Then I it's something with my path and erased it. Proceeded to please, oh my God. No, but that's where you and I first started.
Oh yeah,
started our discussion was the Ty Burns thing.
Right.
And I don't want to get off into that now, because we do have a conversation that conversation that I want us to have.
Yeah.
Since we advertise that. But I do that conversation, or that blog, that Substack, made me realize well, you said something to me about, I think that people generally agree that they want healthy and safe communities, and they want to get along with one another, and they have more in common than they think, I think is what something about like the lines of what you said.
Yeah.
And so that Substack, that article made me realize, I'm like, oh my God, I hate corruption too. I mean, who doesn't hate corruption? Who shouldn't be focused on hating corruption instead of each other?
Yeah, and I think the fact that I do work with data, and it doesn't mean that I'm always right. And put that out there, but it helps me see my own biases. I have what I think, what my opinion is based on what I see. But when I grab data and start analyzing it, it can sometimes tell a different story. I learned that while I was working in oil and gas. We did a lot with the data, with the production data. And it was things that we'd have a superintendent or a district manager that had an assumption on something. And when we would actually pull the data, it wouldn't be what we thought. And so it was one of the it's been things like that I've had throughout my career, that it's one of those, like, I've got to be really careful the way I think about things if I don't have something to anchor it.
Well, let's start from there, because we both decided that we were going to just say something briefly about us, so that we kind of, people had a context for where we might be coming from. So why don't you start, since you just talked about what you did? You might be a little more specific, and then, just a couple minutes about Christy.
Sure. So I want to make sure I understand. You want me to just talk about, like, as far as what my feelings are on firearm education?
Well, no, I was thinking about, just before we even start, are you married? Do you have kids? Where did you used to work? Or where do you work? Where did you grow up? Just that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So I am married. I will be married 23 years this month. It's my Michael Jordan anniversary. I have two kids. I have one of each. I have a boy and a girl. My son is 21. My daughter is 20. She is a student at OU, and my son works for Costco. So that's a little bit about me. I work in technology, focused mostly on data. Prior to that, I moved back so I'm originally from Oklahoma. I was born in Ada. My dad is an Oklahoma native. He grew up in Southeast Oklahoma in a place called Jumbo. And if you've heard of it, I will be really shocked. I know. but he grew up below the poverty line in Jumbo. And I would say that some of his, just the way that, some of the impacts that he's had on me, just with the perspectives that he has, I didn't grow up below the poverty line, thanks to my mom and dad. My mom is originally from Mississippi. Her family was career military. So, I have I think there's been a lot of things, like I've been Midwest. We, moved around. My dad was an electrical lineman. My mom was a homemaker. And then later on, when we got older, she was an administrative assistant. So I think she ended her career at UCO working in the math department. So we're just middle class, everyday Oklahomans.
So I was born in Enid, but we moved to Oklahoma City when I was like 8. So I've lived in and around the Oklahoma City area. I've lived in Oklahoma County. I think that's probably the easiest way to say it. I've lived in Oklahoma County for 56 years, 55 years, something like that. I have 5 children. 2 are adopted. 1 is estranged. My dad was in the Navy. I am married. We beat you. We did 25. We're on 27 now. I have 1.
My dad was Navy too, by the way.
No way. This is getting weirder the longer we go. Because we were just talking about before we got on, my husband does basically what Christy does, and it was in the same area that she was in. So this is very weird.
Yeah.
So yeah, my dad was in the Navy and my husband was in the Army. And I have oh my goodness, she's 42. Oof, my oldest one's 42. My youngest one is 20. Wow. And so there's a real, age range. Yeah. Oh, hey, our friend John, look at this, says Jumbo. Oklahoma is north of Antlers, Oklahoma. The roads in that area are fun to drive on a motorcycle.
It is a breathtakingly beautiful part of the state. If you've never been, just drive down there when the leaves are changing. It's gorgeous.
I have never. I did all of my, and that was the other thing I was going to ask is what is your degree? Do you have a degree?
Yes, I have an undergraduate degree in management information systems, which is just a business degree. And then I have a master's. I have just an MBA. But all Oklahoma, UCO and Oklahoma Christian were the schools that I went to.
Oh my gosh. So I graduated from UCO. I have a master's too. This is weird. Are you? Who are you?
I was going to tell you too, when you said your husband, you say your husband was Army, right?
Yeah, Army.
So my mom's side of the family, my grandfather and my uncle were career Army.
Oh, wow.
So I have 2 uncles on that side. They were Army. And then all of the men on my dad's side were Navy. And then my brother, I have 2 brothers. One of them was Army and one of them was Navy. Wait.
Oh my word. Okay. This is like, this is so odd. Okay.
At the end of this, probably what we will find out is we're cousins.
But you know what? That's not extreme. I mean, you never know in Oklahoma, Christy.
No. I have a story that I won't go into today, but it has happened to me before. I found out years later that I was somebody's cousin that I went to high school with. Yes.
No way. See what I'm saying? Oklahoma.
Yeah.
All right. So I want to do this. I would like to go to your, I'm going to go to your Substack. I don't know why I didn't pull this up before. I should have pulled it up before, but I'm going to go to your Substack because I want to, and by the way, for those people who know me, probably the worst vice I have is cursing. I'm a terrible cursor.
Oh my gosh. It's like you're my soulmate. I love
Oh my God, it's so bad. And my mother, who everybody who watches this podcast knows, I love my mother so much. She was a saint. She would never have, I got my mouth washed out for cussing. I don't know how many times. I'm not kidding.
I think my mom think I got switched at birth because I think she was hoping for like this very dainty, girly girl. And I came out like, I'm playing basketball. I'm shooting guns. I'm going to play in the dirt. I'm going to, and I like cursing probably too much, but
well, so I think that was part of what got me on your Substack, because I was like, GenExpletives.
See?
Okay, I'm trying to find the one on. Why can't I find it?
Let me see if I can pull it up.
Oh, I feel bad because I should have done this before. I should have done this before. And yet then I ended up not doing it when I should have. So that wasn't good.
That sounds like me.
Well, usually I'm better at it and didn't quite.
Let's see if I can do.
Okay, where is it after Ty Burns? I thought it was right after the Ty Burns one.
I'm looking right now because you'll see.
Because Shell Bills, Frederick Douglass.
So it was published September the 7th.
Okay, so hold on. Let me go here.
Let me see if I can I put the.
Here it is. I found it. Never mind. Okay, I found it. All right, now I'm going to pull it in so that people can see. I'm going to share my screen so that people can see the Substack. So this is.
I just popped over to the comments on here. This is so fun. Yay.
Okay, so here is, yes. So you, Denise says lava mouth. I was just about to ask. Ralph says, no, you're an excellent cursor. See, you spelled it wrong. I get it. That's very funny, Ralph. But yes, I'm terrible. I'm awful. Okay, so this was your Substack that I wanted us to talk about today. Finding Common Ground, 22 years of teaching gun safety, not gun safety in Oklahoma. Yeah. So I just asked everybody to read it, and I put it in the links to the explanation about this podcast because I really wanted people to read it.
Yeah.
I want you to go back a little bit and talk about how I didn't want that. I wanted that. Talk about how it was that you got interested in shooting sports. Oh. Let's go that way.
So it's my dad. He, as I mentioned before, he grew up below the poverty line. And they had to hunt every day for dinner. So if they didn't get anything that night, there was no dinner. So I would say on that aspect of it, from my dad's standpoint, that's just always been in their DNA. I have no memory of not having firearms.
Wow.
My dad it was very important to him that we understood how to handle a firearm properly, everything. And so when we moved to Wyoming, I happened to live in a small town. We had a power plant that was in that town that we got a lot of tax revenue from. And so we had this really fabulous recreation center, and they had a wonderful gun range in the basement.
Hold on. Wait a second.
You're fine.
I don't know what I did. Okay, we're going to try this out. Oh.
Okay.
What have I done?
I don't know.
Okay, there. Okay, we're sorry about that.
We had that. So we had a shooting range there, and I was the only girl that was in the program, which I feel like that's my life. Every industry I pick or the career that I picked it's been male dominated. But I did all kinds of, I did target shooting, and I would go hunting with my dad. And so while I never fired the gun while we were hunting, I was too young at the time. I had no problem helping him gut the deer and drag it to the truck. And it's just always been something that I have been a part of. Like I honestly don't have any memory of not having either a deer hanging from the rafters in the garage, or having firearms around. So that was just always a big deal in our house. I think I just made the assumption that everybody's touched a gun before, right? And so I've met a surprising number of people within the state of Oklahoma, also Wyoming. That's where I spent quite a bit of time as a child, that I've never touched a gun, and that blew my mind. And so when I had the opportunity to volunteer with the Oklahoma City Gun Club at this event, and especially that it was focused on women, they can't get rid of me. I'm not going away. Like, I think it's such a wonderful event.
Now, say what the event is, because it's a great event.
Oh yeah. It's the NRA's, I think it's Women on Target.
Women on Target.
Name wrong. I'm gonna get I'll hear about this later. But it's the, if you're not aware, it's the largest women's fun shoot in the nation. And so the woman that started it, Susie Rouse, she's the president of the gun club. She is really the pioneer. She is the one that is behind that. And she's somebody that, you want to talk about an amazing person. Her mother is another person that's really great. Her mother was the one that was responsible for getting the Liberty Fest parade going.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So they've got a lot of history just within Edmond and with Oklahoma, but Susie's been a real proponent of that, and she has grown that event from where it was to where it is today. So we had 500 women that registered.
Oh my gosh, no joke.
Yeah. She typically posts, it's typically posted, the gun club typically posts it, I think February, March timeframe, but within usually a few weeks, it's sold out. But it's one of those, I can't tell you the number of people that I've convinced to go that have never touched a gun before, and now they go on a regular basis. The other thing is, like, when I worked at a local oil and gas company here in town, I worked with Susie to get it on our event calendar at work, to get women from work to go. And I still see women that got involved back then are still attending today. And I think even like at that point, and I'm talking like, this is like 2010, 2011, something like that. But when it was on the event calendar at work, some folks that worked, that were handling that calendar said that event got the most negative feedback from employees when they first started to post it.
Why?
I think it's just maybe some ignorance around firearms. But I would tell you that I feel like we were pretty effective in shifting that mindset. When I did get folks to come out, and it really is, it's getting people to come out. Like, I saw an article in the Daily Oklahoman talking about Senator Dossett. She's out of Tulsa area.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
She worked with Mark Vaughn, and I think I hit on that in that blog post. She worked with Mark Vaughn, who is the president of the Oklahoma Rifle Association.
Okay. On
some legislation. I extended an invite to her to come to the fun shoot, and she came. And I had the opportunity to talk to her. I learned that she had never touched a gun prior to then.
Wow. Okay.
But what I really appreciated because I wanted to ask her how that legislation came about. Like, did Mark reach out to you? I know Mark not well, but he's good friends with Susie Rouse, who I'm friends with. Senator Dossett reached out to Mark Vaughn. And what I really liked about the conversation that we had a couple weeks ago was she wants to really focus on the safety and education aspect, which really aligns with my beliefs. But she also is smart enough to know that she is not going to get anything over the finish line unless she works with someone on it to be bipartisan. And so I know she's doing an interim study right now. She's investigating some, I think, red flag laws. But the challenge there that she admitted to me, where there were some things, and I'm not going to get some of these details correct. But it's something to the effect of, if someone's going through a mental health crisis, they can have someone else store their firearms for them until they get over that crisis. I don't have details on that. The challenge on that is, and this is the thing that she had admitted to me that she was trying to figure out how to work, is we don't want that to be something that stigmatizes that gun owner going forward.
Yeah.
Right? And so you got to figure out how to work through that. And that is it's tricky. Like, I'm not going to say that's an easy problem to fix. I appreciate the approach that she's taking as she's going through these interim studies to look at it. I'm going to be really interested to see what comes out of those. I need to check when those studies are taking place. I know they stream them. I would like to watch some of those just to see what the conversation is.
Well, it's interesting because I really love your background. My background is that my dad went hunting with his dad. My grandfather, whom I never met, my grandfather was a big, hunting guy, but they did mainly, he wasn't a deer hunter, he was a bird hunter. So they would do mainly quail, a lot of quail. And my dad, who always likes to joke about everything, basically said that he couldn't stand quail because he nearly broke a tooth on all the buckshot that he I'm like, okay, Dad, geez, Louise. All right. But here's the thing. So my grandpa, the year that I was born, actually, so I was born in December of 1962. So it was earlier in the year in 1962. My grandpa died in a firearm accident.
Oh no.
And so I was not able to know him because he was killed in a hunting accident. And the possibility of suicide was an issue. And I always knew that he had died, that way, that it had been a firearm. And but here's the thing. I never was, oh God, I can't stand guns. I mean, I don't know why. It just I never became that person. When my grandpa, killed himself, with a firearm. I don't want to have anything to do with that. I just never was interested in it because my dad was never interested in it. He only did it because his dad wanted him to do it. So it wasn't anything he was going to go, hey, honey, let's go out quail shoot. I mean, that wasn't a thing. Right. So I never had that backlash. And then when I met my husband and he was in the Army, he obviously did quite a bit of shooting in the Army. He did several schools while he was in the Army that were, involved with marksmanship specifically. Yeah. And so he, just liked having the idea of, having weapons. And he liked the idea of shooting weapons. Although I told you this the other day, so I'm going to tell everybody else because it's funny. And I love my husband. I'm just fooling on him, but he is very cheap. And so we don't, we don't shoot a lot because ammunition is expensive. Yeah. And I was telling you, so I don't have I wouldn't say fear of firearms, but I will say this. I do keep, my husband bought me a very large Smith & Wesson 9mm gun. I mean, it's
oh, wow.
I know it's not a small weapon.
Yeah.
And I do keep it next to the bed, but there's no bullet in the chamber. It's not racked. And I keep the clip separate from the weapon. So, I mean, I dry fire practice it. When I remember to do it, which isn't even all the time. I have to remember to do it. Right. So I'm not doing it very often. And one of the things that struck me about your piece was that you said how important it is if you're going to fire a weapon to know how to fire it. And I told you, and I'll still stand by this, until I practice, possibly on a daily basis, but certainly on a weekly basis, I'm not sticking that gun in my car.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, unless I don't have a clip in it and there's no round chambered, and I could, pretend like if somebody, if I was in a situation, but then you pretend and you don't know if you're going to get yourself into a trickier situation. I mean, yeah. So, but I did want to, so now that we kind of have each other's background on what gun safety is, now I want to ask you this question, and this is the part where I want to kind of talk about it. Why do you feel like gun ownership is important, or do you feel like gun ownership is important, or how do you feel about gun ownership in general?
I do feel it's important. I mean, that was one of the things I was looking at. Well, I want to give you one more piece of my background.
Okay, sure.
Before, because I feel like this is part important. So when you mentioned that you lost your grandfather, a week before school is out, when I was a junior in high school, my uncle lost he lost his battle with depression. He did use a gun. He was my mom's brother. My mom and dad had to clean up after that.
Christy.
So,
oh my God.
All I want to say is, like, even with what happened last week, all of the nightmare things that happened last week, the part that I focus on, I'm not looking at anything that led up to either event, the aftermath. That my mom and dad will never be the same. It's just one of those things, like, I don't wish that type of pain and suffering on anybody. I don't care what type of person they were when they were alive. That's still somebody's dad. It's still somebody's brother, uncle, whatever. And I think it's one of those, it's very personal. My mom is pretty afraid of guns, especially since when her brother died, very afraid of guns. She won't even touch them. I've never had that fear. My brothers certainly don't. It's just something. But as far as being able to own a gun, I think probably living rural is, if I'm being honest, that's probably what shaped my opinion on that. When you live in a rural community and you have to defend yourself for any reason, I think some folks that live in urban areas don't understand how long it takes for help to arrive.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I think it's one of those things that, like, that's the thing that I think, like, with our legislator, I'm really interested in people that understand the difference between urban areas and rural areas, because they are very different. We have different needs, different everything. As far as gun ownership, I do feel it's really important that we have that ability. I am a big believer in the Second Amendment. But like I said, my concern is, I think we've got a lot of people that just went and purchased a firearm, not really understanding what they were getting themselves into. I think, there's a few folks that I think that don't understand. Like, when I talk about training, the scenarios in which you could potentially find yourself. And, when you think about when you're really scared, and I think that's one of the things.
Oh, that's why
That's why I think people have to be honest about it. We watch movies, you don't see them shaking like they do because they're not actually in fear of their life. If you are actually in a situation where you're in your fear of your life and you can hold a steady hand, good for you. But I know that when they do firearms training, law enforcement, military, they send them through so many different scenarios that it's almost like they become a machine. And I don't mean that in a negative way.
Right.
Need them to be that way, because we have to have them, they've got to stay calm. They've got it, their jobs that's part of their job. That's part of the training. I don't think a lot of civilians get that level of training. I'm not saying we have to have military level of training, but if you are really serious about wanting to carry a firearm on your person, I just think you owe it to the community to take the responsibility and get the training. Yeah, muscle memory and critical thinking. Yes, I agree.
Well, and I wanted to back up because Lisa had a question for you.
I saw that, and I'm 100% about that. Okay. That was one of the things that Wyoming, I'm always going to go back to Wyoming. We had a hunter safety class within school. I can't remember which year it was. I'm trying to think. I think it was junior high. I would be all about that. And the reason why, a few different reasons why, obviously, because I do believe in the education piece of it. Like I said, I've met so many people that have never touched a firearm before. Let's expose them to that and see what that's like. Maybe they don't have them at home, and that's okay. You don't have to have one, and that's the thing. Not everybody has to have one at your house. That's not a requirement, but I still think it's really important that people get exposed to it. So even like the event, like the women's fun shoot, a lot of the women there don't have a firearm in their home. They've never touched one before. And I think it was one of those things, like even Senator Dossett, she had never touched a gun before until she did that. And it was funny because, what was it? Towards the end of we had AR-15, the AR-15 range. Oh, it's so fun. But the AR-15 range, because I kind of warned her, like, this is the civilian version, like, just so you're aware, it's going to be loud. And she was just like, that wasn't scary at all. And I know, but until you get there and try it.
So I probably shouldn't say this, but I'm going to say this anyway. So, and I've written about it. I mean, occasionally there have been a couple of times that I've had gone through depression, and I don't take medication because for me, that's not what I want to do. I feel like they're a holistic, thing. So I don't do that. But there was one time that I got depressed that I literally asked my husband to change the combination on the gun safe.
Yeah.
And I think there is we were kind of fleshing that out, and you fleshed that out a little bit in your Substack on this particular thing. The problem with guns is that as much as they incite fear, I mean, there's just a lot of emotions around it. And all of that is understandable. There's a lot of emotion around that. But I think when I had the situation that I had, for example, I don't know that there are as many people who are willing to say, I'm having these feelings, therefore, these things need to go away. And how the problem is that the gun can't shoot itself. Somebody has to shoot it.
Agreed.
So how do we deal with people who either are struggling with mental illness, and that can look, and I'm including trans Tifa here. Anybody struggling with mental illness.
Mm-hmm.
How do we deal with that? And what are your ideas about dealing with that? And then let's go back after you're finished with that, because there have been a couple of big, long comments, and I want to make sure we hear some of these.
I don't have an answer for it. I'm going to be honest. I think that's one of those things that, like, when I was talking to Senator Dossett, the mental health piece of it, which I also have problems with depression. It's something that just runs in my family, unfortunately. So I can definitely commiserate with you there. And I think even if you take firearms out of it, to get people to even admit that they're having a problem sometimes is such a challenge, because it's better now than what it was 30 years ago.
Yeah.
But there's still a stigma there. And then when you add in somebody's Second Amendment right, so this is their ability to potentially defend themselves if they ever need to. That would be one of those things I would really want to explore, how other places are doing that. I don't have an answer for that right now. It's one of those, like, I think there's so many different layers to the problem. And that's the other thing that I wanted to say too. This isn't just guns. There's mental health issues that go along with it, right? We have a lack of mental health funding here in Oklahoma. We have there's a bunch of different things. And so I think this is a multi-pronged problem. And I think the mental health part of it is going to be the most challenging, but yet I wanted to have this conversation, and I want to continue to have conversations with you, obviously, on other topics as well, because to me, as Oklahomans, this is way too important for us we've got to get away from the us versus them, good versus evil. And we've got to have a way that we can talk to each other in a productive manner to find the best solution for us. I don't care what the solution is for California. I don't care what it is for Arizona. I don't care what it is for Texas, Florida. I don't care. I want to just, I'm to the point now that I want to get laser focused on us as a state, as a community, and try to come up with something, and that's the thing too, is like, especially like kind of, in my blog, I've kind of dug into some historical things, which has been great because I kind of tease, I got my history education by a football coach. So,
didn't we all?
As most of us has. We talked our football coach / history teacher into letting us watch Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure because they used our book in the movie. But the thing about Oklahoma history, we had, and I believe we still have, some very progressive thinkers. There were things that I learned about our history that was so, it was exciting to learn that we had those types of origins. And I would like to try to get back to that. Like, we don't have to be like everybody else, but I feel like we're at a point that we're fooling ourselves if we think that we just need to keep doing the same thing, because I don't want to get the same results.
So let me read this comment by Dan. Dan said, I learned how to shoot at 13. I became a junior member of the NRA. The range was in the basement of my local high school. Politics never came up, ever. More training when I was in the Army. I, like you, believe in the importance of training. When I spoke with many of the members of the Illinois Rifle Association, they saw training as an infringement of their 2A rights. They were adamant. What do you have to say to them and others that feel that way? That's a good question.
Yeah.
Because that's interesting, because I was going to ask you that, because you, as a Democrat, you don't have this. You're not swimming in the same stream with a lot of your friends.
No, but I would say, and maybe I'm naive, but I would say a lot of them don't know about, or let me back up. I think some of them are coming from a place of fear.
Okay, fair enough.
So I think that, and I think about like my mom too. We've tried to get that woman to shoot a gun. Yeah. She won't do it. We're obviously not going to push her for the reasons I mentioned earlier.
Right.
But I think I'd gone to, well, let me give you a perfect example. Let me tell you what was really exciting. I worked the Democrat booth at the State Fair on Saturday, and I can tell you it's a great way to win friends and influence people. But that's okay. We had a really good interaction. I want to mention this. So there was a candidate there. His name's Troy Green. He's running for U.S. Senate. He owns a gun shop, and there was a gentleman we had several people that would see that it was the Democrat booth, and they would head down and try to get as far away from us as possible. That's okay too. But this one particular gentleman, he had mentioned that he was a libertarian, and he just kind of, hightailed it away. And Troy Green went after him, talked him into coming back to our booth. And so this guy came back to the booth, and I was really interested in what the conversation was going to be. And the first thing he mentioned was that he served in the Navy, and if it hadn't been for the Navy, it was really his only way out of where he was in Oklahoma. It was his only opportunity. Yeah. And so I got up and went and spoke to him. I said, actually, that was my dad's, the same. And so the first thing he said was, well, I believe in the Second Amendment. And I said, as do I. And he said, what do you think about AR-15s? And I said, well, my family owns AR-15s. My older brother utilizes his AR-15 to control the wild hog population down in southeast Oklahoma. So there are practical uses for it. That was a conversation that Senator Dossett and I had as well. But what I thought was really interesting about the interaction is this gentleman, he was from Ada. He owned a gun shop in Ada. He was really shocked to meet Troy and I.
I'll bet.
And that we were Democrats, and that we believe in the Second Amendment, and that we, don't have a problem with firearms. So, I think a lot of it is we got to get to know each other better. But yeah, I think.
Well, let me ask you this though, because I think, well, and Denise is making your point. Self-defense as a single woman in a rural community, I'm responsible for this. I'm 911. Exactly. is basically what she said. And I'm not sure about Dr. Amen. I'll have to look that up. And I would too. I mean, I'm actually my husband was reminding me the other day, well, when we used to shoot, you were really good with a rifle. Well, I'm not bad with a rifle, but the problem is you don't use that in self-defense. You use a handgun, and I suck at handgun shooting.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to use, I mean, it's so much harder to use a handgun than it is to use a rifle.
Right.
And Gracie says, whether or not you want to have a gun, we still need to be united in keeping our rights. You lose one and you'll lose them all. And I think there's so much, Dan, I believe training is important where you require it before being licensed to drive or use certain chemicals. I'm guessing the pushback was because training can easily turn into more strenuous requirements since government usually expands its rights and reduces hours. And it's interesting that Lisa says this, because I think Lisa is even more libertarian than I tend to be.
Yeah.
How do you kind of answer that as a Democrat? Because I think that's a real important distinction, that because we already know you're outside the normal anyway, because you are a gun rights person. So that's kind of outside the normal for a Democrat anyway. But how do you feel like, because training is important. You and I agreed on that. Most of the people in here agree on that. But how do you do it wherein how do you do it wherein the government doesn't end up coming in and then start making more and more and more and more requirements? Because I'm not a government lover. I mean, that's why I tend to call myself libertarian. I just want government to leave me the hell alone.
The way that I look at it is, and I don't know if you guys are going to like this response or not, but
it doesn't matter. We need to talk about it.
Well, what I think about is, there's continuing education for different professions in order to maintain your license, right?
Right.
I don't know if we could implement something like that. But I do feel strongly that we need to have something. Now, I would say the last time I took a driver's test was when I was 16. I don't want to, and I operate a motor vehicle. But I think, with firearms, there's a little more,
Yeah, but hold on there though. You make a pretty good point about that, because as much as I loved my mother got dementia toward the end, and she scared me driving.
Yes.
And she was one of those, because I'm a boomer. I'm on the end of the boomer generation. And she was one of those ones that was like, I can do it. I'm going to handle it. And you're like, oh God, Ma, you're going to kill somebody.
Yeah.
And there's this thing, and I don't know why, but it's like, well, how can you make an old person take a driver's license? Well, we should. After you get to a certain age, your hearing gets bad, your eyesight can get bad. Why aren't we making older people? Why aren't we making them? I mean, and here's my point. Here's, I think, a good way to state this. I don't like the government mandating anything on me, right? I mean, I don't like that. But here's the thing. If you don't want to drive, you don't have to take the test. So there's an out. You don't have to take the test if you don't want to drive. But if you want to drive after a certain age, and we probably ought to look through the data to determine, when that would be as an average. I mean, some statistical, person like the one that they use for insurance could figure that out. And then we just say, sorry, guys, but you're going to have to take a driver's test because you're driving something that can kill people.
Yeah. Yeah.
But people get all upset about it and say, well, how can we do that to older people? Well, come on.
They're going to be driving on the road with us, right? They're going to be, it's like, I think about that too, is like, if someone's going to be carrying, I'm going to go to a restaurant and they're there. I hope they know what they're doing. I don't want to find out that they don't in the worst way possible.
And I totally agree with you. But then here comes the bottom line.
Yeah.
How do you feel about constitutional carry? Are you good with it? Are you just like with reservations, or how do you feel about constitutional carry just as a
Just open carry?
Yes.
Like open carry? It makes me nervous. I mean, I think where I get hung up on it is knowing, I think meeting people as I've gotten older. Like I said, I don't have memory of not having firearms in my life. And when I've met people that have never touched a firearm, I took for granted. I think that's one of the things too, is we tend to think that people are like us, right?
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
going to make a decision. I'm so logical and I do, whatever. And then you get to meet somebody and you're like, you don't know what you're doing at all. That's what makes me nervous. I mean, it's like I took before there was open carry, husband and I were driving, we were leaving downtown late one night. We'd gone to some performance, and there was a large group of kids that were on a service road as we were getting onto the highway. They threw a rock at the car, but when it hit, it sounded like a bullet. So it hit it just had a hit in the right spot. Glass went everywhere.
Oh, jeez.
Scared the bejesus out of us.
No
Like
kidding.
I said, initially, it did sound like a gunshot because of the speed of the car and the rock hitting it, whatever. And we were fine. But that kind of spurred me to like, oh, I need to go and I need to get trained and I need to do this. And I went to take the concealed carry class, and the gentleman that taught it did a very good job teaching it. But every story he told was like, he acted as if we were in danger every time we set foot outside of our house, and we needed to have all types of guns strapped to us. And I finally asked somebody, I go, where are you going? Like, just go to a different grocery store. If you have to wear 5 guns to go to that one, could you not just go to this one? Like, it was almost like every scenario he was giving me, I'm just like, he mentioned the IHOP. I'm like, I would just pick a different IHOP. Like, I don't like the fear-mongering, scary, like, you've got to be ready to go at all times. Some people are not wired like that, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But I just think it's a disservice to the community if you are going to be carrying that you're not properly trained.
Well, let me ask you about this, because you mentioned this. Well, wait a second. Let me put this up. How many of us took guns to school every day, hanging them in the back window, the pickup, or in the back seat of the cars? Then you take them to the wood shop to refinish the stocks and clean it all up. Well, so I think that's the problem. And I think that's why you're so different than so many, who are in the Democrat Party, because there seems to be a fear of gun. And I've got to ask you this, because this has been something since the Charlie Kirk incident.
Yeah.
One of the things that I've seen over and over again on social media, and I do want to stop myself and say this. I'm a Republican. I'm designated as a Republican. You're designated as a Democrat. But here's the thing. You and I don't have everything in common with our parties. So we can't really talk. Like, you can't say, well, you Republicans, and I can't say you Democrats, because that's not true. And that's one of the things I think both of us actively want to stop doing.
Yes.
Because that's the problem. So I'm going to back up and rewind. And I'm going to say, what do we do about people? And I've seen them on the internet saying things like this, that, that he deserved it because he was for, 2A, he was a 2A supporter. And he did make a comment one time.
Yeah.
And he said, well, I do believe that, a few deaths from firearms are, and he didn't say worth it, but it are a risk. I think he said are an acceptable risk for not being able to have, have our ability to have a weapon. Well, so people have been coming unglued about that, and then saying things like, well, you're saying that, but look at all of the dead kids in schools. And there's this rhetoric surrounding this that I can't quite put my finger on as to why this is such an issue. Do you have any insight there?
I think it gets down to just the antisocial behavior we've all been participating in as a result of social media, honestly. I'm never going to celebrate the death of anybody. Like I said, I think about the aftermath. I've had too many people in my life that I've lost, either, natural causes or something unexpected. It really concerns me, the political violence. I hate that anybody's first thought is, well, I don't agree with them, so I'm just going to shoot them. I don't subscribe to that. I don't subscribe to dancing on somebody's grave either. I don't know if I have a lot of insight. I have opinions, but
I'm just curious. What are your opinions? Because I think my opinion is the same thing as you, in that we've just dehumanized each other being on these stupid things. It's like, it's so much easier to call you a poo-poo head.
Yes.
On this thing than it is to your face. Who's gonna, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, you got the keyboard warriors that are, they'll shoot off anything. And I can't say that I have always been good on my part, but I certainly tried to get better. I think I've gotten to a point where I really don't watch any of the news stations. I just try to find as balanced, I try to find information that I can and put it together, because I think some of these media outlets, they get certain rhetoric or talking points and they really amp people up. I just think a lot of them don't really know what they're talking about, quite honestly. Like when I talk about the difference between urban and rural, I think the same thing. Like we have folks on East and West Coast getting people amped up, but they really don't know what it's like to live in the middle of America.
Well, dang it, we're not giving anybody any fodder today, are we? Because training is important. When one gets a CCL, you have to take a class and show proficiency with a firearm. You owe it to yourself and to others to be responsible. And I'm going to stick on that one for a second. The whole Constitution originally was created to, I'm trying to think of, I'm sorry, my verbiage today.
Oh, you're fine.
It encompassed a people who is willing to be responsible for themselves.
Yes.
And I think today, because so many people have talked about the Constitution, and well, we can talk about that in another time, but if you can't be responsible for yourself and you're not willing to be responsible for yourself, it's extremely hard, in my personal opinion, to write legislative policy to fix something that is a personal responsibility problem, because it's not, you have to fix your personal responsibility problem. The government can write these laws. Like I'll give you a good one, a seatbelt law. Okay. I personally think seatbelt laws are ridiculous. I think they only work for insurance companies, because they, if you want to die in a car accident because you don't want to wear your seatbelt, who cares? I mean, so I died in a car accident and I wasn't wearing a seatbelt. That was the thing. That was my responsibility to myself that I just chose to take on. Why do you care? Why do you have to have a seatbelt law? Do you follow what I'm saying?
No, I think, let me restate back to you, and maybe we'll see if we're on the same page. So what I'm hearing is if I go in and I'm going to drive my car and I choose not to wear my seatbelt, that's my business. Because if I want to go flying through my front windshield, that's my choice. Right? Totally agree. You know what? And I don't disagree with that. I think with a
how can you write a law against being stupid?
I mean, what is it? The tag on the iron, like or the hair dryer, not to put it in the bathtub. It's like we had to put that on there. That's great. That doesn't give me any hope. But I think with this, if we're looking at firearms, I have the probability of injuring many people potentially, depending on what type of firearm I have, et cetera, et cetera. So, I mean, I think, like I said, I kind of look at it as we have accountants, we have lawyers, we have doctors, and I realize they chose those professions, but they still have a continuing education they have to do. Like especially with physician, right? They do have people's lives in their hands. I want them to be well trained. I want them to continue education. I would want the same thing with gun owners.
Well, I mean, and I can't really make an argument against that because you're right. And the seatbelt thing, that was me. But you're right. If somebody else has a weapon, it can hurt other people than just them. Julie says, as long as there's a possibility of having the public armed at this place or that, the crazed killers will not attack. And this is kind of a thought process that I tend to kind of think as well. Mass shootings are always in gun-free zones. Ban gun-free zones, not guns. Thoughts?
I don't know if I agree with that. I mean, I think about we say that, but we had it was Parkland and Uvalde. We had trained resource officers that were chicken shit to go into the building.
Yeah.
I don't know that you can train somebody necessarily out of that. You would hope that if you had quite a bit of training. We talked about muscle. Somebody mentioned muscle memory earlier.
Yeah, right.
That's a tough one. I'm going to be honest. That's tough for me to think about that.
So how do you rectify that situation then?
Well, I mean, I think one of the things that I think about is like if there is an incident happening and law enforcement shows up, how do they know who's the good guy and who's the bad guy? Right? If I go to, someplace and there's multiple people that are armed, how do I know which one I'm going after? Does that make sense?
No, it does. But then look, I wonder if we could look at it like this. It is kind of a risk to own a firearm. And I know that, the president of OK2A, Don Spencer, has told me numerous times that, you can make yourself a target if you're just going to slap your sidearm on. It's actually better if people don't know that you're armed.
I agree with that.
So
I do agree with that.
Yeah.
I think we had a guy, when was it? It might've been last year. Time frame. I can't even, everything goes together. But there was a guy that was walking up and down North May Avenue. I don't know if he had an AR-15 rifle. He had something on him.
I remember that.
Yeah. And it's just things like that. It's like, yeah, nothing happened, but why is that necessary?
Yeah.
I think somebody else told me there was somebody that armed themselves with an AR-15 and walked through the zoo. I don't understand that mindset. Like, and I would just say
in your face stuff.
Yeah, it's almost like the small penis energy. That's the only way I can describe it. But the folks that I know, I'm using my.
Don't make me wash your mouth out on the podcast.
I'm using my good words. I could have said the bad word. I think the vast majority of the folks that I know that do carry, you don't know that they're carrying.
Right.
And the folks that I know that do carry are very well trained.
Yeah.
I don't have I've never felt uneasy or unsafe with them. I remember being in my 20s out at a bar having a drink, and there was some jackass that came in and wanted everybody to know that he had a gun. And I made my way over to security and was like, see that guy right there?
Yeah.
And got him out of there. But I think there, and that's the part that's the challenge, right? Because you have the folks that are the responsible, do things by the book, get trained or whatever, and then you have the assholes that ruin it for everybody else.
Yeah.
And, that's got some of that I feel like has to be addressed. The folks that want you to know that you're carrying a gun, why do you want me to know that you're carrying a gun?
Well, and I guess that's kind of Don Spencer's point too. You make yourself look like you're unstable.
Yeah.
Jen said, honestly, every Democrat I know in this state owns a gun.
Give them my number.
I can put that out there. No. Are there statistics kept by age in at-fault accidents? And there are, and we'll go over that in just a second because I know we don't want to go too long. Families used to take care of this and intervene in the driving of their elderly. But you know what? That's another problem that we've talked about numerous times on our regular podcast is that we have turned over so much of our lives to government control that we don't even control ourselves anymore. We don't even do things for ourselves anymore. And that's one of them. Cars and firearms aren't in the same category. I agree, Dan. Yep. We said that. I agree. Yep. A car is a lot bigger piece of lead than a bullet. I get that, John. I understand. Mm-hmm. Driving is a privilege. It affects hundreds of people every time you hit the road. Protecting yourself and your property is a right. I agree. But then we have elderly that would be home with no way to drive themselves. Well, and I think that's been part of the argument, and we'll talk about that at another time. But yes, should a life and death scenario occur, say in a parking lot, one must consider many factors before using your firearm. Only extra classes beyond a CCL will equip you with that knowledge. Denise, Dan says yes. IHOP food will hurt you before.
I agree with this one. I'm a Waffle House girl all the way. Just so you know.
And I think Waffle House actually allows carry. We grew up in a different world, and that's true. I wonder if Christy is a
closet libertarian. My husband wishes. He so wishes.
I was like, no, read some of her Substack. She's not. We just picked the easy. We picked the easy one for the first one.
Oh yeah, isn't that funny? Guns. We picked guns. Guns was the easy one.
Well, I mean, that's hysterical. I see what you're saying, but I mean, between you and me.
Yeah.
So Jay and say, can we say that extremists are the problem regardless of party affiliation? Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's very fair.
And 100%.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's why we wanted to do this, because there are things we're really not going to agree on, and those will come up eventually. Those are things that we're really not going to agree on, but we are going to do this by talking it out and having the discussion, not calling each other poo-poo head on Facebook.
Right.
So that's the difference, because we don't want the extremists to win. Oh, and I do want to talk about your blog before we get into Epstein. Yeah, the days when everyone ran around with guns in our trucks and cars was when the Democrats were in control. And
snap!
John Boy Stanley, get up!
You know what? I was talking with Troy Green about that very thing. I think he's around the same age as I am. Seeing pickup trucks in the parking lot at high school with gun racks on the back was not unusual.
No, not at all.
I mean, not that it wasn't. Edmond High School wasn't like that. When I moved here, there was one high school, so it wasn't like that. But the high school that I went to in Wyoming, absolutely like that. I have so many, it was weird if we didn't see a truck with a gun rack on the back. We had a lot of really rural kids that went to that school.
Well, and just before, Dan says labels cannot accommodate real life variations. The world isn't black and white. And I think, Dan, it's a whole lot easier to consider that it is, because it's easier to solve problems when they're black and white.
Yes.
Because this is what we were just talking about, figuring out can you mandate training? That's where it starts getting sticky, how do you mandate training and still keep your 2A rights? Because And Christy, seriously, I mean, you've been doing this a long time. Do you believe we can mandate training in a way that's going to protect our rights?
Well, you know what? I went and dug around a little bit last night on a little bit of research, and there were some interesting approaches. Insurance companies providing discounts on insurance for people that went, other types of incentives. I think there's got to be a way to do it. But I think incentivizing it is good. I think it's really important that we don't price out folks from exercising their Second Amendment rights. That's the other thing too, is there's always money involved, right? So I feel like there's a lot more maybe corporate support, maybe taxes, whatever. I don't have all the answers, but I think there is room for that. There has to be.
Yeah, because I'm with Julia. Julia says mandate is a bad word. We have so many comments that are really good. And I got into a crap ton of trouble for using the seatbelt thing. I mean, I'm getting hammered.
I wear my seatbelt. I just want to put that out there.
I sometimes don't want to. Sorry.
Okay, I see a comment that's interesting. Can I speak to it?
Oh, completely. Do you know how to, if you take your mouse and you click on it, it will show up. And then that way people can see it. Because I'm not going to be sure which one it is.
It's the one from Lisa O'Brien. I clicked it, but it's not coming up.
What does it say? And I'll click it.
It says we need to understand that Christy's attitude is very different than most in her party.
Okay, hold on.
Came in at 2:11 p.m. if that helps, the timestamp.
Well, she said earlier, it's not Republican versus Democrat anymore. It's hinged versus unhinged, sound versus unsound, logical versus illogical. And I think, see, that's the thing. You say you agree with that. I agree with that. But how do you solve that problem? We can't mandate mental health. We can't
mandate mental health, but we can fund mental health services.
Well,
and I'm not saying I have an answer on to do that, but I think there's other things that we've got to look at. I feel like as a state, we have all of our eggs in the oil and gas basket, or mostly have.
Yeah, don't get me started on green energy, because you and me will be like,
I know, but we've got to have some more diversity in income. What that looks like. I mean, surely we've got some options out there, but I think having all of the eggs in the oil and gas basket, it hasn't.
So you're saying, well, and I understand what you mean about diversification.
Yeah.
But how does diversification of the economy help fund mental health or help?
Well, and that's the whole thing, is there's taxes that we could potentially do on corporations, community responsibility. There's the excise tax for oil, or I guess it's the production tax, oil and gas, which I know I'm not going to be popular by saying that.
None of this is about popularity.
I know. I think it's one of those things that we need to look at how other states are doing it. It's interesting to me and I'm not saying we have to copy other states, but I think it's silly if we think we can solve this without looking outwards to see what's been effective in other areas. What do we think that we could do here? What might work? But I want to get away from it's going to always be this way. And every time there's a shooting, it's thoughts and prayers, and we just keep going down the road. It's just.
No, and I get that too. I don't believe that. This is one of them. Lisa's getting me. The seatbelt helmet laws are because victims ended up in county hospitals costing taxpayers millions of dollars, Jenny.
Yeah.
Okay.
Another really kind of a neat idea that I saw was workman's comp discounts for corporations that provide funding for their employees to get.
Okay, say that. I'm sorry, I was reading Gracie's comment. I apologize. Say that one more time.
Workman's comp discounts for companies that provide training.
Oh, now, okay. Oh, now see that I might could get
Yeah. And
I might get in on board with you on.
Yeah. Insurance companies, they make a lot of money. It would benefit them if they kicked in because, the less claims you have there. Like I said, I think there's some things that maybe we just haven't considered.
Okay, so say that one more time because I'm writing that down, because I think if we're going to write down things we can agree on, then we need to approach legislators about it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So tell me that again. So
insurance or workman's comp, which one?
Either one.
Well, workman's comp discounts for providing employee firearms training. I think there was something about in unions. I pulled some ideas last night. The other thing too was to look at large retail stores. My main thing on this is I don't think that we need to, I don't want to cost any more money to individuals or small businesses.
Right.
But we have large box stores that sell firearms.
Correct.
I feel like maybe, is there additional taxing that we could do on those folks? Out of state oil and gas operators that operate here. I just think there's different ways that we could think about that, because I look at within the state of Oklahoma, what types of benefits have we provided in terms of either workforce, tax incentives, or whatever for these corporations to come and do business here? Are we getting everything? Are we getting our fair shake from them for what they're taking from us?
Well, no, I'm sorry. I'm just going to say no right away,
Yeah.
and we can have a discussion on it.
Right. And I think this goes back to kind of the discussion you and I had right before we jumped on here, was the unity, right? The uniparty or what have you, where they have us fighting at each other. And I think on some of these, I think a lot about that in the corporate world. It behooves them for us to fight.
Oh, sure.
Because they could potentially, grift more money. But I think if we come together and really look at it holistically and look at, like Elon Musk, yes, he's a billionaire, but I'm just using him as an example. I'm certainly not wanting to discuss him. But he didn't just come on the scene and already have all this great success. He got a lot of incentives. And
no, he did. You're 100% correct about Elon.
And so it's things like that I feel like we've got to be more honest about it. I think, like when we talk about potentially maybe increasing production tax, I know that's been discussed on school funding as well. There's the argument, well, that will prevent them from operating. No, it won't. Do you know how much money goes in oil and gas? It's a lot. It's a lot.
No, but here's kind of there's a struggle there. But my first instinct is to say that private business is private business. It's what makes the economy turn. And when we decide that it's okay to tax a private business to do something else, you're taking away their you're taking away their livelihood, essentially. But then I also agree with you. If you take government subsidies, then you've already stolen from me anyway. Well, so you may have to give some of that back then.
Yeah. Well, think about the PPP loans and all the. We got fleeced on that.
Yeah, for sure.
But again, I just think there's got to, and I think and I will be honest, part of my stance on this is just my own personal observations of the pay disparity when I was in leadership levels while I was working in technology. I know full well the difference between what I'm getting paid and all of my perks that I get as in a leadership role versus what the folks in the underlings get. And when you really look at what that disparity is, it really makes me think more money can come off of the top to either benefit communities, different programs. So
But that's kind of the tax the rich mentality, though, right? I mean,
say that again. I missed that part.
That's kind of like the tax the rich mentality, though, right? I mean, they have it, therefore we deserve to have it.
I'm not saying we deserve to have it. I'm saying that our communities, our resources, were part of what helped them build to where they are. So they didn't get there where they were by themselves. They got there with, either government, investment, etc. I mean, that's all I'm saying. But I'm not a believer in, okay, once they have something, they're just allowed to just keep making money and doing everything else and leave everything else behind. I think that's the part that I get a little bit, when we look about giving back. I'm going to use Elon Musk again. I would rather, instead of having rockets, how many people could we have fed or housed or insert what other need that we know we have in the United States, and yet we watch that jerk spend a ton of money to go up in space. I mean, that's the part that kind of, it bothers me. I mean, it's one of those things that, if you look at other countries and the way that they tax, and I'm not saying we have to follow the way that they tax their private industry, but I think it's certainly something that we can look at and potentially learn from.
Yeah.
But I do think that there's such a disparity in the money that's being made by corporations, and there's not a lot of that trickling down into communities. And I'm not talking about individuals, I'm talking about within the communities themselves.
Right. Well, and that's kind of let me throw a couple more because we're running long. Personal responsibility comes with learning. There are consequences for every choice, some good and some bad. If there was a sign that said school personnel may be armed, there wouldn't be a school shooting. Thoughts?
Guys are stretching me right now.
No, we got to be honest here.
I know. You know what? I think it's totally fair. I think the signs should maybe. I think about some of my former teachers. If they were armed, that would scare the bejesus out of me.
I had one that went nuts. So yeah.
But
well, but let me ask you about this. Because so let's stay on this.
Okay.
What if we said, because I think there was and you may, and correct me if I'm wrong, somebody, if I can get down there to see it. Okay. I thought there was some kind of either an incentive or a law, or did it not pass, that said that we could allow teachers to have weapons, but they had to be trained. Did that not pass?
I don't know.
See, I don't remember. Let's see if somebody's writing in here. Oh, God, we have so many good comments. There will be gun-free zones as long as private property exists. Business owners can deem it. Well, and I got to tell you, I'm with you on that, Lisa. Again, the libertarian side of me says it's your business. You do you.
I agree with that.
Personal choices stop being personal when the fallout spreads. If I or anybody in my family is murdered by a gun, I would not demand the citizens to disarm. No different than if I died from COVID, would I demand society all forcibly be vaxxed? Dangerous freedom versus peaceful slavery. And that happens to be my perspective. I don't know about you, Christy. What do you think?
I agree with that. I agree with the statement. Like I said, I've personally been affected by a death from a gun. I don't believe that means that everybody should turn their guns in.
No,
I never have.
Somebody says, say it, Christy, it's okay. And then this is funny. Lisa says, yay, we're cussing and saying penis. Thanks.
Penis is not a cuss word.
Just saying.
Yeah.
Good conversation. Got to cut. JFK Democrats are not the same thing. And I agree with that. We need to understand that Christy's attitude is very different.
This is the one.
From most in her party. In California, guns are demonized, and it's always by the Democratic Party. They are intertwined and inseparable. 100% gun hatred and Democrats. This is refreshing.
The reason I wanted to talk about that particular comment, and this is something that came up over the weekend. I went to an event for Gina Nelson, who's running for Congress. And there was a gentleman that walked in. He was wearing a Let's Go Brandon t-shirt. So I knew that he probably was not going to be aligned. That is totally fine. But he made a comment about how she was aligned with the Democratic Party and they were the party of evil. And so when I saw that comment about, in California, they demonize guns, I feel like sometimes in Oklahoma, we demonize Democrats. And I know that you guys feel the same way on the other side. I hope that this conversation opens people's minds to knowing that not everybody in the Democratic Party is all the way to the left that thinks that everybody should give up their guns and just slap fight.
But that would be fun, the slap fight.
Yeah, I'm not ruling it out as an event in the future. But I just think it's one of those, like, we've really got to just sit down and talk to each other, and be ready to disagree, but peacefully, and to understand, where people are coming from. I think that we can do a lot of good work with, having these conversations and kind of fleshing some of this out. And the way that I look at this too is, and it's a lot of the way that I look at like any kind of problem that we're going to be tackling, at work. I'm not going to try to come up with one solution for the whole thing. I'd rather break it out into parts and focus on each one of those pieces.
Oh, yeah.
Because doing that, I think we're going to find a lot more common ground, no pun intended, in those areas. Because I think, when I was at the fun shoot, Senator Dossett asked me, we were at the AR-15 range. She was like, I'm not trying to be nasty. I just want to understand what application is there in civilian life for AR-15. And of course, my perspective, like I said, my brother uses it to control the hog population. I would love to hear what other people, if they have another application that I am not aware of. That is not a gun that I shoot on a regular basis. But I think that's a fair question to ask. What is the application of that? Why would you use that? I remember when the ban got lifted, and there was a friend of mine, and I won't say who she is. She was a pretty prominent member of, the Oklahoma City crowd. But I remember being at, I was the only Democrat there. But it was funny because she was talking about how, why she didn't understand why anybody would go hunting with an AR-15. And I was like, do people hunt with AR-15s? And, I said, my family personally, we like just shooting them. I mean, they're fun to shoot. I'm more, like I said, I'm more of a target. I'd rather just shoot a target. I'm really not interested in sitting out in the cold and waiting for a deer to come by. I washed out of the hunting program whenever I got to do that. My dad left me on the side of the Kiamichi mountain range one time when I was in high school, and I was like, I'm never hunting with you again. I had a cousin that got lost. I don't remember the details. He was lost for I think a week or so.
Oh my God, are you kidding?
Long story. No. And so not long after that, I went down to Jumbo with my dad and my uncles, and we were going to go hunting. And of course you get up at the ass crack of dawn.
Yes.
And then you're driving to a certain area. My grandmother's place was over near the Kiamichi mountain range. I say mountain range loosely because I've lived in Wyoming. It's not a mountain range.
I know, but come on. Don't be mean about the Kiamichi Mountains.
I know. But it was funny because we went hunting and my uncle came because they basically would stick you somewhere on the side by a tree or something, and like, okay, you just wait here until you see a deer come by. Well, I was crouched up against the tree, and it was really, so I took a nap. He doesn't know I took a nap, but I took a nap because I was tired.
He does now.
I know. So anyways, I took a nap, and I finally, I heard a gunshot go off. And so my uncle said, if we don't come back and get you, you just keep walking that way. And if you hit the fence line, then you need to go down. And I was like, okay. Nobody came and got me.
Oh man.
I walk over to the fence line, and by this time I'm pretty pissed off. And then I'm stomping down the side of this mountain range, and I was in a clearing, and I looked through my scope on my gun, and I'm counting the number of orange hats. They were all down there. They left me because they got so excited that they got a deer that they all ran down to my grandmother's house. And it was like,
stinky boys.
I know.
Well, let me ask you that. Well, let me just tell you this. So you said a minute ago, and you said that Senator Doss had asked you about the implications, or what's the use of this?
Yeah.
So this is what I'm going to say, and I think this is what people with that thought process may be missing.
Yeah.
So let's go back.
Yeah, please.
Why was the Second Amendment written into the Constitution of America?
To be able to defend yourself.
From what?
Government.
The government.
Mm-hmm.
The government.
Mm-hmm.
So do you think that I have a prayer against a government that has tank and nuclear weapons and drones and blah and blah?
You said that because I feel the same way. I'm not going to win against a tank. I really look at it. I know that's why it was written in the Constitution, and I totally get that. I think in reality, I can defend myself against someone breaking into my house, or trying to come, that. A government, I'm screwed.
Well, but here's the difference in our thinking here. So my thought process is, because we've got neighbors out here, and we're pretty close out in the boonies, and you know how that was when you grew up.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think if you have enough AR-14s and you have enough people, you stand a fighting chance. But I can tell you, even with enough people, with only a handgun or with no weapons at all, you have zero chance.
Agreed.
Right?
Agreed.
So I think that's the part that needs to be understood, is that, and I know a lot of people will go, well, we're just screwed, and so there's no way. And when is the government ever going to come after you? Well, it's true that the government is coming after us in a lot of little ways. ALPRs taking our, taxing us to death, all of these things. And we're more likely to get that than we are a tank showing up in our front yard. But the point of the matter is that once you deprive me of that ability, you have deprived me of my ability to even keep myself safe in the face of a tank. And I should be able to have that ability. I mean, because you never know.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. But I definitely think that I am not going to protect myself from the government if they want to come and bring a tank or.
And I'm not going to disagree, but by God, I'm going to have my chance. I'm going to have my shot at it.
Exactly. Yeah, no, I totally agree.
There's definitely a way to require training. Is there a way that doesn't open the door to more government interference and infringement? Who knows? We're going to talk about that before we get off of here. Okay, I never wear my seatbelt, and you do not want me to wear one. I freeze up. Sean Boy, good Lord. We can take personal responsibility for our children or ourselves not being exposed to depraved behaviors that lead to mental health issues. And I do think that's, you know what, Christy, I'm going to write myself a note so that we talk about mental health on one thing, because I think we are in agreement on what we want to see as the outcome, but we need to figure out how to get there, because I'm not sure we would agree on that. But I do think that's a conversation we need to have.
Denise just corrected you.
Okay, hold on.
You did say AR-14.
I did.
Okay. I was sitting there thinking, going, is there a 14?
I'm sorry. But I warned you at the beginning. I'm not a gun person.
It's okay.
I'm just not. You need to educate me.
To be dangerous, to be fair. So
do what?
I said I have enough information to be dangerous, to be fair. So
no, you've got a lot more. I'm totally willing to give you that. You have a lot more information on that than me, and I would actually take training from you and may work that out. Pushing for insurers to step up with mandates or incentives is just supporting the corporate oligarchy. Insurance already rules our lives enough. I hadn't thought about that. Because we already have the insurance incentives where they say, hey, can I put a tracker in your trunk and I'll lower your insurance rates? And I have the I don't choose that because obviously I don't want people following me around. So I do have the opportunity to say no. However,
I think that's kind of my point is, that's one way. It doesn't mandate, but I think they have to be, they have to be considerable incentives.
I know, which is why we've got to, if the people come together and work together, it would harm the corporate world a lot.
Yes, it would.
Farmers and ranchers having an open market to sell their products in the urban areas with no regulations.
I completely agree about coming together. That was one thing. I know I keep mentioning my dad. He was, he's still very, very much everything he buys has to be made in the USA. Always has been.
So he doesn't buy on Amazon.
Listen, this is when it wasn't cool. So when Levi's changed their, they moved their manufacturing down to, I think, Mexico. I think it was Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad started wearing Lee jeans.
How funny.
Those are not cut to make anybody look attractive. And so I was like, they were, this is my dad. He is not a vain person. There is not a vain bone in his body. He was wearing these Lee jeans. They're awful looking, high water. And I gave him hell about it. And he was like, they're made in America. That's all he cares. And he was one of those that, like, if he went to a car dealership, which I think he only went to buy a car maybe once or twice in my entire life. I felt bad for any car salesman that dealt with him because he wanted to know what percentage of that car was made in the United States, because just because it says Ford or Chevy, that doesn't mean anything. And all the sales guys would just be like, oh, geez. That's been his thing always, my entire life. You can't buy him anything because hardly anything's made in America that you try to find.
But I'm with him on that, and we could go into that on a whole other day too. If we were free, taxes would be voluntary, and government would be what people want it to be. That's invest back into the community.
Yeah, I'm 100% on that.
I don't demonize Democrats as I used to be one, and still have friends who are. I do demonize much of what their party currently stands for, and I think a lot of us believe that way. Mary Jo says ODP has been trying to expand the narrative and to include as many diverse perspectives as possible. What's ODP? Oklahoma Democratic Party. But we Dems still have a right to hold on to our values of supporting each other. Of course you do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Of course you do. Mary Jo, nobody would tell you not to, because I'm going to hold on to my values as a conservative too. So absolutely. I totally get that. I'm not trying to take yours away, and I don't want you to take mine away.
John boy, I'm curious. I really am curious about this. What animals are hunted with AR-15s? I'm completely ignorant in that area. I would be curious to know. Is it deer? Is it elk? Is it?
Well, don't worry. He'll chime back in.
I know. I can't wait.
Liberty is lost in baby steps. So the red flag laws, training, restricting full auto, just the slow decay of our rights generation by generation. I think that's what so many of us worry about, because it's the whole thing. Because Robert, I'm sure you would agree that people who carry guns around should be trained in guns. I mean, I would hope you would agree with that.
Yeah. I'm
pretty sure, knowing you do. But so the tension has to be, is there a way? Oh, I just had an idea. What if, sorry, it just came to me so fast. what if, are there not like some privately organized shooting organizations that people donate to that would give away like money for training to different people? Do you see what I'm saying?
No, I think it's a great question. That's one that I don't have the answer to, but I know people who would have that.
We need to look that up, because because I think NRA is just a lobbying arm of, they're just a political arm, and I think Gun Owners of America may be a little less just we need to have a privately held gun membership where you have people donate and you give it to maybe schools for training teachers who wanted to. You're not going to make everybody do it, but if there were teachers who wanted to, you could donate money to them to get training for them to have a firearm. And then maybe you have legislation that says if you are this well trained, you have a firearm. Because I do think that if people believed that there was a possibility that they would lose their lives trying to pew somebody else.
Yeah.
I think maybe, now mental illness aside, because people who are mentally ill don't think rationally, but I think angry people or people with an axe to grind or something like that, those kinds of people, I think they would definitely think twice about it if they thought, oh gosh, they could get me too,
Yeah. I think that's fair.
And I love the Kaimichis and
Potato Hills. Yes, it is beautiful.
They're so beautiful. Christy, I think you may soften a lot of people's opinions about who a Democrat is.
I hope so. Thank you, Lisa. I really appreciate that.
Exactly, Jenny. I don't know what I said, Gracie, but at least it was better than what I said about seatbelts, apparently. We can't defeat Taliban, Viet Cong, Russia without, this is just what we were talking about. AR-15, Jenny, AR-15. I'm sorry, Denise. Sorry. Please put that on my gravestone. She didn't know what a gun was. My husband and I have a fun little game I like to call remove the damn tracker, reinstall the damn tracker inside my glove box. It's one way we keep the spark alive. That's why I love you, Lisa. Yes. Levi and Lee jeans both moved to Mexico. Yes. Now, wait a minute. I wore Lee jeans.
It did.
We should all insist on American made. I agree with that. Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
Coyotes. That's what she's saying in AR.
I saw that. And that totally makes sense. I'm more wondering, and I get that because, like I said, my brother uses it to, oh dear. Okay. I figured it would have to be a larger animal.
Yeah.
I'm just curious. I just know from, what my brother uses it for. I don't use one personally. I can shoot them from time to time, but that's about it.
Well, I can promise you, after seeing what coyotes have done to chickens and turkeys and guineas on my property, I would go after them with a big gun like that.
I would imagine.
That's what I was saying about corporations investing back into the community spot. Well, now that I'm okay with, Gracie. Okay, so there's another one for you.
Yeah, see? and that's kind of what I'm talking about is when I say taxing them, we've got to, like I said, we go back to what have they taken out of our community, or especially really big corporations where they have several, locations.
You mean like Google, like in Pryor or Stillwater?
Yeah. But I mean, I'm not, that's another thing that concerns me. But some of these larger, large box retailers, things like that, to be able to do business in Oklahoma, I don't know. Like I said, I'm ignorant to all of the ways that we currently tax them. But looking through a few things that I was reading through last night, I feel like maybe that could be a something else to look at. I think that's we've got to get real. My opinion, I think we really got to get focused on protecting the little guy. So like I said, my big thing is I would never want to price anybody out of their Second Amendment rights. I feel very, very strongly for that. I love the idea of having some type of curriculum in school to train, or at least provide exposure to the kids that don't have that. I think that's great. But
how do you answer the people in your party who are going to scream that you're crazy for even suggesting that?
That's a good question. I think that's, I've had some good conversations about firearms with folks on Democrats. I think it's one of those things that I'll probably bring them to the fun shoot. Honestly, that's one I've used that event. I've been doing it. Next year will be 23 years. I've been doing that event so long. It's been really effective. I'm not saying that's the only way to do it. But for me personally, again, it goes back to either let's sit down and talk it through, or what has really benefited, I think, several women in my life is hands-on. Like, actually experience it, and then you realize it's not scary. That was one thing that I really enjoyed about talking to Senator Dossett about a few weeks back. Was we did one of the ranges was shotgun range. So we do, what is it? Shotguns, pistols.
I can't even do shotgun anymore.
Yeah.
It throws me out so bad.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I can't. But she was more along the lines of, like, when we were doing rifles, 22s, she was like, this is really approachable. And I said, I love 22s. That's what I learned on. That's what I started on. It's just, it's not intimidating. It's easy to work. But I mean,
plus the ammo is cheap, according to my husband.
Yes. See? But I think the other thing, as far as, like, if I'm going to say folks in my party, if they think I'm crazy, I think we need to sit down and talk it through, because I just think there's especially within Oklahoma, Wyoming, a bit, that's part of the DNA of the folks that live in those states. We're very naive if you think that there's a possibility that you think that we should remove firearms. I don't think. Now, I will say, I know that these things have been floated out there. I personally have not had any conversations with Democrats who have been advocating for that.
Well, but let me ask you this, though. I do know that one of the biggest pushbacks, but it was also this squishy Republican middle as well. When that bill did come up about arming teachers, there was a lot of Democrats screaming about that. How dare you? And that's guns in schools. And because there's a lot of talk about, the Young Democrats, for example, just today, I think put out a statement about how, and it was a very nice statement. I mean, I'm not complaining about that at all, but they did, advocate for gun control on college campuses again. And you're like, but you missed the point. There wasn't anybody on the campus armed. It was the dude off the campus that came onto the campus that was armed. So you're not worrying about the right thing.
Yeah. I mean, I think as far as teachers being armed, I'm not a fan of that.
Okay, and tell me why, would you, please?
Well, here's a few things I struggle with. The first thing I struggle with is we're 50th in education. We have teachers that are already paid. They're really poorly paid, and they are having to also purchase their own classroom materials. I would rather put money into that versus firearm training, like, if I had to prioritize. And I think that's the part that is a little bit of a struggle, just in the funding aspect of it, is it feels like we have people that are willing to fund the firearm education and arming them, but we don't have people that seem to be willing to fund the things that they need to do their job to be effective in the classroom.
So taxpayers fund millions of dollars worth of stadiums and sports equipment. And
I would say that's the other thing too. Like, I would probably, I know we're going, like, the Thunder Arena. as an example.
Well, no, let's just stick with public schools.
No,
because we're talking about, you said that you would rather not, you didn't want to have teachers armed because you didn't want the money not going directly in a classroom, basically, right?
Right. What I wanted to the parallel that I wanted to kind of paint is everybody was all about paying for that arena. In Edmond, everybody gets all worked up about, yeah, let's get a new football stadium. But I don't hear anybody saying, yeah, let's get some more computers in those classrooms, or let's get some more. I don't see the type, and I'm not saying it's not there. I haven't seen it, or any type of energy around that kind of thing. Or it feels like it's more of a finger pointing at the teachers for not being effective when we haven't really given them what they need to be effective in the classroom, I guess. So I know that's like kind of on another topic, but.
Well, no, I mean, it's really not, because that there is a lot of consternation in the Democrat Party about giving teachers the opportunity to have a gun if they're trained.
The other thing that I would say on that, if that teacher is willing and able, right? Because we're going to have teachers that don't want to have any part of that.
Oh, no, for sure.
So, I mean, that's the other part too. I don't want to, I think from my standpoint, I wouldn't want it to be like it has to be a mandate for teachers.
Oh,
I think
no.
their job is already hard enough.
No, I'm just saying it, and you know me, I don't want another mandate. So no. I'm just saying if a private organization, for example, stepped up and said, hey, we'll pay for all your firearm training, would that be a problem?
I don't know.
Does that nullify your argument?
Well, I don't know. I don't know that it would be a problem. I just think, like, to me, I would prioritize the other stuff over firearm training in the school.
Well, but if we want our kids to be safe, and kids, we talk about, we got to keep our kids safe, and it's always about the kids.
Yes.
How is it not safer to have people in the building that are armed? Responsible people who have been through training.
Yeah. And I mean, without knowing the person that has the responsibility, it's hard to say. I mean, it's hard to say, because I mean, I would think, even on the training aspect of it, how often are they being trained? Under what conditions are they training in? It's the applicability of and the effectiveness of that training. I mean, I just think that there's too many unknowns to be able to say, oh yes, I think this is great, or no, it's not. I think I kind of get locked up in, I know how underfunded they are on some other things. And I struggle with that piece of it.
Okay, that's interesting, because there's a huge disagreement between us. I've seen this before. Oklahoma Democrats or California Democrats circa 1998, slowly, then suddenly. This is why we Californians moved to free states. I'm not sure what that means. I think it means that, because we were talking about this the other day. AR platforms are fun to shoot. Firearm training is much like learning to drive. For my son was driving a truck pulling a 40-foot hay trailer at the age of 5.
Wow.
This said, the exposure to things in rural areas, like we talked about before.
I totally agree with that.
Michael said the biggest part of protecting the little guy is that the little guy has to take responsibility for his life and not just live and depend on the government for everything. Bingo. Possibly many of the Democrats against guns have never been around them, like you said. Yep. Therefore, some school classes could help remove the misinformation. So that's...
I do really strongly agree with that one. And I would think that's also applicable to other areas, right? We might say something negative about certain things because we really don't know. We're taking talking points from somebody and we really don't know about.
Sure. And I think we do that on a lot of things. Everybody does.
Absolutely.
Robert says, I'm a hard no on mandatory firearm training. You mean just as a rule? You don't mean like if a teacher, for example, want it, because I got to tell you, I don't want mandatory anything having to do with guns. But if there is somebody around a child that has a gun on my tax dollars, I want to make sure that person is trained.
No question.
Mary Jo said she had to go. Sports, in my opinion, are worse than a gun, for they give a lot of kids false hope, a failing mindset, for they never get to go to play college or pro. That's interesting. Let's not overlook the fact that education is primarily controlled by the Democrats and the left. We have been pouring billions of dollars into education in Oklahoma with no result. If you want to see effectiveness in the classroom, you have to make a commitment to actual academics and not this current charade masquerading as education. And we'll have a topic, we'll have a discussion, because it's 1:57. We've already gone almost 2 hours, which I told you was going to happen.
I know.
I warned you.
Talk about.
And we'll have a conversation. I'm not trying to shove that aside. I'm just saying that's a conversation you and I need to have on another time, because it's going to be very long and in depth, because we're on very far. We're on very far sides. But again, I want to have that conversation with you, because I think we can do. I think we can do it reasonably. I think we can do it adultly.
Yes.
I think I just made up a word.
Adult. I say we keep it
intellectually, and that's what we need to do. So I'm super happy about our deal today. I thought it went really well. I wish, and I do think we did what we said we were going to do. So let me make sure, because we're going to have to close out.
Okay.
So we talked about the fact that some kind of group providing firearms training. So like a way for a corporation to invest in their community would be for them to provide firearms training. Yeah. We just didn't get to a way we can't make them do that. I mean, you can't mandate that, right? So we have to figure out a way to get them there.
Right.
And even though Robert said he thought it was a terrible idea, we talked about insurance or workman's comp for providing firearms training. And I would have to go back and look at Robert's comment to find out why I hate that idea, because I kind of like that idea, and I'd have to suss that out a little more, because if it's an insurance company, I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah.
Christy, I really enjoyed this, and I appreciated all the comments that we had. And I thank you so much for everybody for all your comments. And I'm sorry we didn't quite get through all of them, but I appreciate them so much, and the chance to have the dialogue. And hopefully we can do this again, or I think we're going to plan to, right? Isn't that what we said? Plan to do it next month. So for right now, we'll do it like once a month until at least I can get my schedule a little more under control, but we'll do it once a month. So I'll set it back up, and we'll pick a topic that we're going to go over. But I do ask you to subscribe to Christy's Substack. Again, I'm going to put it up here as we go out, so you can see
I have an idea on continuing this conversation if anybody's interested. So I know we had a comment that, so from Robert, a hard no on mandatory firearm training.
Right.
What I would ask, if anybody says hard no to anything that we're saying, what would you suggest? Right.
Right.
Like, because I think where we get to, people say hard no, the door shuts, and we stop having conversation. And I understand your stance, but I want to keep the door open, and we got to work through it. So I would welcome any comments. I like Jenny and I met that way. We actually, you guys basically saw us meet for the first time, like in person-ish, in screen. But yeah, I would definitely ask if you guys want to continue the conversation. I think it's just, as I said before, I think it's just too important to just shut doors and go our separate ways.
Okay. Well, so Robert's answering you back. He said teachers could go through training, but that's just to make public feel good. I took the cleat training for concealed carry, but I carry no matter what. If I was a teacher, I'd be carrying. But that didn't answer the.
Not really.
I mean, we could say cleat. Excuse me. Hold on. Yikes. We could say cleat training. And specify that, but it's, again, how do we go about that? And that's kind of where we need to be. So
and maybe we look at like, what's the overall goal? And then how do we get there? Like, I really am. I would look at better educated in handling and safety, et cetera, et cetera. How do we get there? If you have ideas on that, I would, throw them on the blog, send a comment. I think it would be a great conversation to have.
And I do want to point out too, if you please go find her, because she's going to have different opinions, but then if, offer something else. But she wrote an article today, Understanding Groyper Culture from Online Memes to Political. It was very interesting. I didn't know anything about this. It has to do with the assassination of Charlie Kirk and who the guy was. And I just suggest you read it, just because it was very, very interesting. And I learned some stuff I don't think I really wanted to know, actually, Christy.
Yeah. And I would say, if anybody's still listening, that was one thing that Jenny put a comment on there, talking about alt left. And I let her know there is a group that I've recently come across. I'm not going to put the name out there yet because I don't have enough information on it. But that is something else that I want to explore as well. So there'll be more coming. I'm just, getting stuff out there as I can. So
yeah, and I'm kind of pissed about it, actually, because I can't keep up with you, and I'm a little annoyed that you write way more than me. So I'm just asking you to write a little less so I can keep up. That's all I'm asking.
Okay.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining Christy and I on this little venture today. We really, really appreciate it. It was a joy for me. I enjoyed it. And obviously we did a pretty good job, considering the fact that we're 2 hours and 3 minutes in.
I know. Well, thank you for the opportunity. I really am appreciative of you reaching out.
Oh, so happy. And we'll do it again next month, and I will advertise it, and we can advertise it together. And then don't forget, it'll still be up. It will stay up on YouTube and Rumble. So you can, just because you didn't watch it live doesn't mean you can't send it to somebody.
I actually had somebody that couldn't watch it live, so I'll make sure she knows about that.
Absolutely. All right, everybody. We will see you again Wednesday morning on the regular Rope Report. And I've forgotten who it was, but be there at 9 o'clock anyway. Our guest was sorry, but be there Wednesday morning. Oh, it's Carmen Greider. That's who it is. It's Carmen Greider. So if you want to hear about what Carmen Greider is doing right now, tune in at 9 a.m. on Wednesday morning. Thanks so much, and we'll see you again next month.
All right. See ya.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.